and what I usually do in this segment and talk about something that I've spent 25 years gloriously being pretty much educated by this guy and this guy solely, and that would be lacrosse. We are in the lacrosse finals this week, and of course Maryland, Towson, both going up to Boston. I wish that these tournaments here were in Baltimore. I know they've been in Philadelphia. They've been in the region. I went to Final Fours down in College Park. Even though this guy makes fun of my lacrosse knowledge, he has been trying faithfully for a couple of decades now. He's down in Boca Raton. He's the one-time local legend here, and of course at Towson, as well as banging around Hopkins and all of these parts. He's now down in Boca, coaching the Denver team in the MLL, and always a faithful watcher of all things lacrosse, and a guy that's been trying to get me on the right side. He is Tony Seaman. How was your tan, Seaman? I was worried when you moved down to Florida that you wouldn't get enough sunshine out there, buddy.
It's unbelievable. It's great to wake up in the morning and walk outside with a pair of shorts and a T-shirt on. Somehow they convinced me to help coach a high school team down here at St. Andrew's School. And every day in the afternoon, instead of putting on 5 jackets and boots and so forth to go out and coach, and afraid to put a whistle in my mouth because it's going to freeze my lips, I have a T-shirt and shorts and get to coach January through May in glorious weather. So it's been great, and got the tan going, and it's great to hear from you. And I got to tell you right off the bat that one of my favorite things every morning is to look on my phone and get my app going and catch up on Baltimore sports on WNST morning newspaper.
Well, I appreciate that, man. We do send that out at 7 o'clock. I look at it as like a little poke in the morning. You know, you may read it, you may not. If you like what we do, we're there for you. It reminds you that we're still here. And, of course, the Internet takes us everywhere now. You know, I mean, I remember a day and time if you moved to Boca Raton, you wouldn't get anything from us. Now you can get literally everything. I see you out on Facebook. I know you're out there in how often you flying to Denver? Like, let me in on that situation, because we're going to talk about Towson, we're going to talk about Maryland, but it really is interconnected in the lacrosse world. Like, if you're in, and I know I had Mark Burdett on last week from the Bayhawks, that, you know, this is the breeding ground for where you're going to get your players, and we've all sort of waited around. And I saw a funny old graphic the other night. The Capitol Center had a reunion, and my friend Tracy Brennan, who was the PR person there 30 years ago, in their PR thing, they had a picture of a girl in a Washington Wave outfit with a lacrosse stick. We're going back 30 years now. How long lacrosse has tried to become professional and do it in a way where players could make a living, in a way where coaches can make a living, in the way where they could sell tickets. We're getting closer to that, right, Tony?
Yeah, it's getting there. I mean, our pro players all have full-time jobs. We bring them in on Friday night practice. We have a walkthrough on Saturday morning, and then most games are Saturday night, and they fly back home on Sunday. So it's tough for these guys because it's 16 straight weeks of being committed to flying out on a Friday, wherever they go, wherever they play. And, you know, you walk out of your job on Friday night after a whole week, and now you're committed to playing in one of the 9 cities, and then returning on Sunday. And the biggest part is that Monday through Friday, there's no coach there blowing his whistle and making you get in shape or stay in shape, fitness. So you have to be self-disciplined, and you have to probably hire a personal trainer and get that done on your own so that you're ready to play on Saturday. And that's a commitment that's really huge for a lot of these guys.
That's not for everybody, right? I mean, you know, something when you got a lacrosse stick when you're 16, 18, 20, 22. Now you're 25, 26. You're in City X. You know, that alone would probably disqualify some of the better players, right? Like, some of the best lacrosse players in the world aren't playing professional lacrosse because they couldn't afford to, right?
Yeah, or they're engaged or married.
Right.
Wife goes,
well, there you go.
What,
sure.
Are you kidding me? You're leaving for another weekend with 2 kids home?
What are you, 16
No.
again? What's wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. But
Amen.
that being said, you know, you've become a part of this, and obviously you're still flying from Florida out to Denver, and I mean, it's nice to get a paycheck and all that, but I mean, you're not spring chicken anymore, Seaman, but you're doing it. Why do you do it? You love it?
I love it. I love it. It's the greatest game. It's the best, by far the best players in the world. It's the best rules for our game. It's fast. It goes up and down. And it's just, you know, you almost get caught up instead of coaching and watching, because it's just such an incredible game with such incredible athletes going up and down. So that's fun. And this year we finally talked to the league owners and the commissioner, into moving the draft. The college draft used to be in January for the league, so you never really got to see the seniors play a season. And yet you still picked out who you wanted and you drafted them. Now, this year, the draft is finally going to be on Memorial Day Sunday up at Gillette Stadium. And so we've had the whole January, February, March, April, and May to watch these guys play. So we all 9 GMs and owners and coaches have a really good idea of what their board looks like and their depth chart and what they're going to do on draft Sunday.
So are you flying into Denver?
Now, I have a game in Denver on Saturday night, and then we have a red eye that's probably going to take us from Denver to Boston on Sunday morning, and then we have the task of driving from Boston out to Foxborough. And anybody who's ever been on that hell road, Route 1 lane, knows how difficult that is. But that's what we're all doing on Sunday morning.
Sleep on the plane, caffeinate upon awaking. He is Tony Seaman. He is the longtime local lacrosse legend now down in Boca Raton doing some high school work. Look, I threw a note out on Sunday because the games were going on. It was very obvious. Towson had already gotten into the finals. Maryland had moved along. And I said, I need some serious help for some lacrosse guests because I want to raise the bar this week for how we talk about lacrosse around here. And, you know, Quint's coming on, Mark Dixon's coming on. I'm like, I got to find Tony Seaman. And you weren't in my phone. You weren't, the number I had on you was a bad number. And then I found the good number. So here you are. So prime me up for all of this locally and how much things have changed in just a little bit of time that you've left. One thing that hasn't changed, Towson's still doing a pretty good job of playing lacrosse, right?
Yeah, Towson's terrific this year. It has been very, very good since Sean Nadalin took over. And he's done a great job. And if there's a great coaching job done this year, it's the job done by him. They started off with some losses to some of the bigger programs in town, although they did upset Hopkins. And he's had them on a roll now the last couple of weeks. Ironically, the last time Towson went to the Final Four was in 2001. And Danny Cacci was one of my players on that team. And he's the assistant coach at Towson now for Sean Nadalin. So they got a good idea.
It's been 16 years. Are you kidding me, right? It's been that long?
Yep. It has been to the Final Four. You know, it's a really
that was in New Jersey, right? Or am I nuts?
Yes, that was at Rutgers.
I watched the final game in the Batemans there off the campus. Dude, that feels like it had to be 5 years ago. It's been 16 years?
Yep, 16 years ago. We lost to Princeton by a goal in the semifinal game. And Princeton went on to beat Syracuse in the championship 2 days later.
Wow. I mean, it's starting to date me now. But, I remember tailgating with you when the finals were in Baltimore. It kind of stinks that it's not in Baltimore, right? I mean, this has become big bucks. It's become a bidding process. I don't know that anybody's getting rich off lacrosse Final Four, but certainly I liked it more in Baltimore than not here this weekend, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of the few sports in the NCAA that has championships that pays for itself and pays for everybody who's in it and pays all the per diem and the travel and everything like that. So it's got that contingency. You know, it's like hockey. You've got that 16 to 30,000 that follow it and love it and would go anywhere to see it, although it's become quite expensive to spend a weekend in Gillette now and pay the price for the tickets and so forth. But it's still great, and it's covered by ESPN, and they do a great job. They covered all the games last weekend. They covered all the games yesterday and Saturday. So they've done a great job, and ESPN will cover it next weekend as well.
I'm going to be in Denver this weekend. You're going to be in Denver this weekend. I'm going out because my wife's never been to Red Rocks, nor have I. It's a bucket list thing. You know, after she's had cancer twice, we've put things on our bucket list and said, let's start knocking off some of these things we've always talked about doing instead of doing the same things over and over again. So we're going to be out there, and I always hear about the legend of lacrosse in Denver. I've been to Denver a handful of times the last few years. I haven't personally seen it, even driving around or whatnot. I haven't seen kids with lacrosse sticks running around. You're out there every other weekend now coaching the MLL team out there. Tell me how the legend of Denver lacrosse. How did it all happen? You're out there now. Obviously, the players are out there, and here we go again where Denver's going to be in this Final Four again this weekend. And I think anytime Denver's in the Final Four, it becomes even more problematic for trying to get the old Princetons and the Syracuses and whatever to drive into a place like Gillette Stadium. It is across the country. It is on short notice. I don't know how much the fan base follows Denver, but every year I look up, and Denver is a big part of this lacrosse thing now, right?
Yeah, well, the best move that Denver University ever made was that they hired Bill Tierney out of Princeton and brought him out there as the head coach. And I think this will be, if I'm not mistaken, his fourth trip to the Final Four out of 6 years as the head coach at Denver. And he won the championship 2 years ago with Denver University, and they're back in it, and they're one of the four best teams by far in this tournament.
You talk about a school that's a lacrosse school, right? The way Notre Dame's a football school, no one had ever heard of Denver before 6 years ago, right?
Maybe in hockey. And they won the championship this year. They won the Division I championship in hockey, so they've got a gorgeous hockey facility. And the first time I went out to visit, Billy was one of my best friends, and we were co-partners along with Dave Cottle from Maryland, and in camps and stuff like that over the years. But to watch Billy go out there and do the job he's done, he's by far the most talented lacrosse coach. I mean, he won 6 national championships at Princeton, and now he's won 1 in Denver, and probably has a good shot at winning number 2 in Denver this year. So that's a great story in itself.
There's a whole pioneering thing, right? I mean, you talk about the pioneers going out to Denver and doing it. I mean, bringing that sport anywhere outside of Long Island, upstate New York, the New Jersey, the Maryland hotbeds where it was 30 years ago, when I would have played in high school as a kid, if I had been inclined instead of being a baseball nerd. People in Denver had never heard of it. The sport has spread. I mean, obviously to the Midwest, obviously through the Big Ten. You have been as big a part of this as anyone. I wouldn't say are you shocked by this, but is it on schedule in your mind from what you and I talked about 15 or 20 years ago that you were always, look, it's growing, it's going to grow. It's definitely grown. I talked to Mark Burdett about this last week. I don't think there's been anything in my lifetime in 25 years on the radio where you could say baseball has grown, because it hasn't. I think football has grown because of the NFL and because of gambling and whatnot. But as for a sport that no one outside of here played 30 years ago, and now you're obviously playing it down in Florida, lacrosse has legs as a sport in this country.
Yeah, it's amazing, and the growth in Denver has been huge. And Pat Bolin, who's the owner of the Denver Broncos, was convinced by a senior vice president in his organization, who was a lacrosse player at Hampton, Sydney, to get a team and bring him and start him out in Denver in professional lacrosse in the MLL. So 17 years ago, the Denver team was created, the Denver Outlaws, and they've been around in the MLL since its existence. And we were lucky enough in the last 3 years that we've won the championship twice. And right now, we're 4 or 5 games in, and we're 4-0. So we're moving toward another one. That would be great to be able to repeat and win another one. But the attendance that we play right at Mile High Stadium on either a Saturday or a Sunday night, and we average between 5,000 and 10,000. But for 4th of July weekend, we set the record every year, and last year we had 31,000. So it's very popular. Denver is a great sports town, and it's a great community, and lacrosse has become really, really big, and Denver University has been a big reason for that. Just take Florida, for instance, down here where I am. There was 12 years ago, there were 16 teams that played lacrosse, high school teams that played lacrosse. Today, there's 198 that play high school lacrosse in the state of Florida. So that's incredible growth, and it's happening all across the country.
Well, what do you attribute the growth to? Obviously, you love the game, but what has made someone whose father never picked up a lacrosse stick or had never knew the rules, what's making that kid play in your community right now, Tony?
I think they see it, and they find out that you can be almost any size. You can be fast. You can be a little bit slower. You can be big. You can be small. and you can play the game. And it's a game that's action. It goes up and down, and it's a game of skill because that you can learn yourself by just taking a ball and a stick and going out and finding a wall and throwing it and getting better at that individual skill. It's fascinating. It's got the speed and up and down of a soccer or a hockey, basketball, and then it's got the scoring, and it's got also the physicalness of football. So it kind of combines all together. And what's happened, I think, really across the country is that more and more guys that go to college and play lacrosse, and they get out and they get jobs in local areas, and they go, God, I got to start this game here because I loved it and played it as a youth, and now I can hand it over to my kid as he grows up, and that's where the real expansion's been, and it's happening everywhere.
Tony Seaman, you know him, you love him as the longtime coach in these here parts at Towson as well as Johns Hopkins. We forget about that Penn thing because, well, it's Philadelphia, and why would we talk about that? He's out in Denver right now with the Outlaws as the general manager. They play a game on Saturday. The draft, of course, on Sunday for the MLL. And on Saturday, Towson, Maryland, Ohio State, and Denver all get together up in Foxborough. Give me a little preview of the weekend. Let's start with Towson and Maryland and the local hopes for a final. Any chance you're going to be a little sweep on Saturday, or a chance that the Maryland teams will get swept out this weekend, Coach?
Oh no, I think that both programs have an excellent matchup. They've got a great chance to repeat. I mean, I think this is Maryland's fourth straight trip to the Final Four. So Tills has done a great job at Maryland coaching that program and bringing in. He's just such a great recruiter. They're number one in the seed, and they've got every chance in the world to win a national championship this coming weekend. Towson's the only one of the four teams that was unseeded. They upset Penn State 2 weeks ago, and a huge win on last Saturday by upsetting Syracuse. And they have played Ohio State. That's who they're matched up with on Saturday afternoon in Foxborough. And the first time they played them, they lost 6-3 or 6-4. So they're right there. They certainly can give Ohio State everything they have, and I know that Sean Nadel and his coaching staff have them as well prepared as they could be. Maryland's a big time favorite. I think to win this thing from the time that the teams were announced, and we'll see if that pans out or not for them. But they've got 3 or 4 just outstanding players that all the pro teams are looking at for the draft. As does Towson. Towson's got Drenner and Siderman and Adams and and Mays, 4 really talented players that could go pretty high in the draft. And then, of course, Maryland has Rambo and Hedgecock and some outstanding players there. Davis Allen, and you probably could draft 5 or 6 guys from the Maryland team that will go in the MLL draft on Sunday. So it's exciting for all of us who are part of the Pro League to watch these teams play over the last few weeks, and to figure out what your board looks like and what your depth chart looks like, and decide on who you want to go after. And at the same time, it's a tremendous weekend for lacrosse and well covered by ESPN, and I think it's going to be very exciting.
ESPN's been a big part of this, right? I mean, I think of Preakness owning the third weekend of May, and certain the NBA will own the early part of July now with LeBron and the Warriors getting together. But on Memorial Day weekend, I think of that not just locally because I'm a Baltimore nerd, because I don't have the greatest association with lacrosse, but I do feel like there is a period, especially on Memorial Day morning, much like the NHL owns New Year's Day now with that the outdoor game that they play. I feel like that has become lacrosse's day sort of in America. You wake up, you put ESPN on a pretty big holiday, you're going to see guys throwing a lacrosse ball around, even if you're from Houston or Phoenix or someplace where you've never seen a lacrosse ball.
Yeah, that's so true. Absolutely. Last weekend, I was in New York City for my son's getting married in Labor Day weekend, and they had a engagement party up in New York City. And my hotel did not have ESPNU, so I walked across to a bar and watched all the games on Saturday afternoon, and it's amazing how many people walked in to have lunch or whatever, and I had the TV going there at the bar. Would stop and watch, and then all of a sudden they'd sit down and they were pulling out names and who's playing, and so yeah, it has become a big tradition over many years now that Memorial Day weekend is lacrosse weekend, and it's huge in Baltimore, as we all know. When the Ravens were good enough to say, let's bring it here and let's use our stadium and let's have this whole weekend be here. And it is too bad because of all the places, Philadelphia included, and I know how you always feel about everything in Philadelphia, but there's no doubt that Maryland does the best job. Baltimore does the best job of bringing the Final Four in, and the hardest place to get to and the worst place to be at and have to go home from is Gillette in Foxborough in Boston. So that's always the hardest trip.
Well, that's Kraft and Belichick. We're still paying for Belichick, right?
Amen.
He is Tony Seaman. He is longtime local lacrosse legend and coach. He's down at Boca Raton with his feet up, in sandals, I hope, no doubt, coaching lacrosse down there at the high school level, as well as the general manager out in Denver for the MLL team, the Outlaws. All right, so here's the last stupid question of the day, and this goes back to your era at Hopkins and stuff. I'm assuming at Hopkins, some of those years you were sort of kind of undefeated or a one-loss or a two-loss team or whatever. I look up now at these Denver teams and Maryland teams. I mean, it used to be a time where if one of the Davids got knocked off by the Goliaths at any point in the regular season, it was, heresy. Now all these teams lose a lot during the regular season, which really says to me that there's no more powerhouses coming out of Syracuse and Hopkins the way there were back in the 80s and in your era, where teams could get through this thing unscathed. That it feels to me like the talent level must be getting pushed around, not just to Denver, but to places like Marquette and, throughout the old ACC, where the level of competition is such that even the best teams lose a couple of times during the year.
Absolutely. As 100% parity has really hit because of supply and demand. There's just so many more high school players that can play at the highest level than there are teams that can, or colleges that are playing, even though it's up into the 70s now with Division I and over 190 in Division III and a lot of teams in Division II. There's just so many kids playing at the high school level that are really talented that are going to college, and it's spread out. So it used to be that Hopkins and Maryland and Syracuse could reap all the rewards of the harvest, but not anymore. It's spread out to everybody. And then, of course, this tradition of recruiting 8th graders and 9th graders to commit to your college program was just a crazy thing to get going, that trend. And now what's happened is there's a lot of juniors in high school that all of a sudden reach puberty and become a really, really strong player that the big guys can't take because they already filled their recruiting class. So the Albanys and Marquettes and Richmonds and Towsonds and all the other teams can grab those guys and become as good as any one of the big boys, and that's proven out big time.
Towson, Maryland final in Boston on Memorial Day. That'd be a good cookout for you, right? You're staying up there for the game on Monday, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and yeah, that would be a tremendous weekend, and nothing would be better. I remember 2001, we got beat in the final seconds by Princeton in the semifinals, and to make it to that championship game would have been the dream of my lifetime. That's for sure. It's a game that I'll remember forever. As we beat Maryland in order to go there to the Final Four that year, and we beat them in the last 5 seconds on a face-off and a trip down the field. And one of the big keys to that success was Danny Cacci picking up a ground ball on a face-off and throwing it ahead for a fast break goal that put us in the lead. And Danny Cacci will be on the sidelines for Towson, ironically enough, 16 years later, and helping Coach Nadel take this team to the championship weekend. So can't do anything but wish them the best of luck, and the same to John Tillman at Maryland either way, whoever comes out on top, that would be a great win for the Maryland area.
All right, next time I'm down in South Florida, you and me are going to go down to Tom Jenkins on Route 1 south of Fort Lauderdale, and we're going to slab up some ribs and some sides and some iced tea and catch up on old times. We will see you in Denver on Saturday night as well as up in Foxborough on Sunday and Monday. Coach, man, I hope this whole sort of semi-retirement thing is treating you right. You certainly sound spry and young and happy and full of a suntan right now, quite frankly.
Well, thanks. I got my feet in the pool. I just got done skimming, and I'm ready to go here. But thanks a million. It's great talking to you, and there's nothing I like better every morning than waking up and looking at my phone and seeing the WNST morning newspaper.
It's a little piece of Baltimore without the humidity, without the the pollen, without the crime. You don't have to worry about any of that down there. Keep sunning yourself, and good luck to the Outlaws out there, and we'll stay in touch with you. Thanks for coming on, Tony. It's a pleasure to catch up.
Anytime. You bet. Bye-bye.
One of my favorite dudes. He was a longtime head coach around here, and he's always sort of grabbed me by the hand on the lacrosse thing. He is Tony Seaman. You can Google him up, find him out on Facebook. He's running around as the GM of the Denver Outlaws of the MLL and is coaching down in Boca Raton, doing some high school work down there and coming home to Baltimore. Towson with a chance on Saturday. Maryland with a chance on Saturday to get to the Final Four. We're going to talk a little lacrosse around here and mix it up with our Oriole baseball and our Ravens OTAs and NBA Finals and a back look at the Stanley Cup and all that stuff that we got going on. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. By downloading the TuneIn Radio app, you can even listen in Boca Raton, Coach Seaman, if you wish to. Just the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault is there for you anytime. Podcast, listen when you want, where you want, how you want. As plugged twice in our previous segment, the WNST morning newspaper does come to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning, and that's all powered up by our friends at Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com, where you can get in the same great shape that Coach Seaman's in. $10 a month. There's one right around the corner from you. You can get a little inspiration at planetoftriumphs.com out on the web as well. Don't forget any breaking news. If the Orioles are sending pictures up, sending them down, you're going to get that first on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. We got trips to London, Green Bay, Nashville on sale now under the Road Trips tab out on the website, and you can always email me. I am a very available individual. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Twitter. I know I'm forgetting one. I don't know. Instagram. Yeah, that too, where the pictures all look nice and there's filters that make me look younger than I actually am and better looking. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.